Hi everyone, welcome back, and in this video I'll be giving you some information on REST APIs, what are REST APIs, the guidelines that need to be followed, and some examples. So if you don't know what an API is, how an API works, what are the different types of APIs, I've taken videos on that. So you can click on the links that I have provided in the description box and you can take a look at them. And let's get into this video. So what are REST APIs? So REST is otherwise known as Representational State Transfer APIs, and it's a framework with a set of guidelines for API architectural design of system interactions. So we all know that when systems want to interact with each other, API is one solution that you can have to manage these interactions. And in order to, you know, put down these system interactions, there needs to be an architectural design that is framed. So these guidelines help in framing this architectural design, which is where REST comes in. So apart from REST, there are other architectural API types, which are SOAP and RPC. So the REST API it was introduced by a computer scientist known as Roy Fielding in the year 2000. So he was the one who introduced this entire framework. And speaking about REST, when a client requests a resource using a REST API, the server transfers back the current state of the resource in a standardized representation. So as you can see here, you have a client and you have the server. The client always requests for a resource. The resource can be some information. So once the client gets this resource, the server gets this request for a resource, the server has to provide or transfer back the resource as a response to the client. So this type of an interaction between the client and the server needs to take place in a standardized manner. Okay, so in order for the client and the server to communicate with each other, there needs to be a common language which both the server and the client can communicate in. So in this case, when we speak about REST APIs, the common language that is used is the HTTPS communication protocol, which is the hypertext transfer protocol. So this is the common language that is used between the client and server. And REST APIs, they follow REST guidelines. So when you're saying that the API is a REST API, then there are various guidelines that need to be followed by the when you design this API, it has to be followed, and the client and the server, they follow certain set of rules during the interaction and exchange of information. So let's see what are these guidelines. So the first one is the client server separation. So in this type of a guideline, it always states that only clients can raise a request and servers must respond to a client's request and not vice versa. So if you see in this image over here, a client can always raise a request for a resource to the server, and on getting this request, the server can respond back to the client. It cannot happen vice versa. Clients cannot respond to servers, neither servers can initiate any requests to the clients. So that's the first guideline. The second one is using the uniform interface. So as I said, in order for the client and the server to communicate, there needs to be a common language. So that common language is the hypertext transfer protocol that is used. So if you see here, the common language is the hypertext transfer protocol that I mentioned. So when a client requests for a resource, HTTP protocol is being used. And when the server wants to respond back to the client, at that point of a time, the response is sent to the client in a standardized format, which is called as JSON, which is JavaScript Object Notation. Okay, so if you see here, the request that a client sends to a server is in this type of a format. There are two sections of the request. The first half of the request is a method and the second half is a URL, also called as an endpoint. Okay, so for example, if you see a method, HTTPS, to give you a little overview, HTTPS has a lot of methods, okay, that are used to interact with the servers. So one of the methods is get. So when you want to retrieve any information, get is one method that is used. So that is the method, and the URL or endpoint needs to be provided like in this manner. Okay. So the URL, why is it called an endpoint? Because the URL is the resource, a web page that you are trying to retrieve or you are trying to access. So that's the point of interaction with your server. So that is why it's called as a URL. So you can have many methods. In HTTPS, you have many methods. Out of that, the common four methods are put, delete, get, and post. So put is put whenever you is used whenever you want to update some information. Delete when you want to remove or you want to delete information. Get is when you want to view any information, when you want to retrieve any information. Get method is used, and post is also used when you want to create something. So these are the common methods that HTTPS has. So the next one is when the server wants to respond back to a client. At that time, a JSON, standardized response format, is used. So here is a small example of a JSON. And if you see by this format, it's very understandable and lightweight. So normal humans can understand this information. So the JSON that is sent back to the client is sent in a way that can be understood by the client. Okay. So this is how a uniform interface is used for communication between the client and the server. The next one is stateless. So this is the exact unique feature of the REST API. Okay, it is stateless, which means that the API does not maintain past clients request information. Okay, let's say that the client wants to, let's say you're interacting with an online shopping website, and you want to view the list of products that the website is providing. So at that time, you want to view those products where you would use, let's say, get products, okay, from the product services. So at that time, the server is going to give you the list of products. It doesn't have to remember when did you search for a product or when last did you come to the site. Nothing of that. It's just going to retrieve back that information and give it to you. So that's what they say when they it means when it's said that REST APIs, they are stateless. So every new API, the request that is being raised by the client, it will be processed as a new fresh request. Okay. So it will not be taken as a continuation of the previous request of the client. So every request that is raised by the client is a fresh request that will be handled by servers. And by this particular mechanism, it reduces the server memory, and server can process huge number of client requests. Okay, so the server doesn't have to remember anything about a client's request. Okay, by this it will reduce the memory of the server, the requirements that you need to have for a server, the memory in terms of memory, and also as the number of clients keep increasing, okay, the number of requests also keep increasing, which means that it can handle the number of requests coming from clients. The processing is also kind of speeded up, and there can be, the server doesn't even store information about clients. Whatever information that needs to be cached about the client, what happens is the information is stored in the client's local system. So whenever the client logs in back to the application, to the web page, the local information is taken and it's used for faster loading of the web page. Okay, so it reduces the need for the servers to store all this information. So this is about the stateless guideline in REST APIs. And the next one is code on demand. So code on demand, this is an optional guideline. And in code on demand, what happens is the server sends executable software code. It can be, for example, Java applets, it can be JavaScripts, etc. The server sends these executable software codes to a client upon a request. So let's say a client is requesting for some information for a resource, and the server sends executable software code back to the client. And you might ask, what will the client do with that software code? Okay, what happens is that software code in turn will run on the client's local system. So you might wonder what could be the possible use cases. So it can be simple as a quiz, a survey, game. All these are examples of, small executable software codes that run on the client system. So this is an optional guideline, but it's part of the REST API guidelines. So these are just some guidelines about the APIs and the REST APIs and how REST APIs work. So there are, I mean, like, so many companies that have adopted to this particular, API approach and this architectural design, because it's easier to communicate online with other web applications. It's much more efficient. You don't have to, stick with one monolithic application, since now many organizations and the trend of development of technology and products is all moving into microservices. APIs are playing a very important role, and REST APIs is also one of the important ways in which you can interact with other systems. So many companies are adopting these REST APIs into their businesses and products. So if you see Twitter, Spotify, Instagram, these are some examples. So it's not that only you use REST APIs to get and retrieve information. You can even post information. Okay. For example, let's say you're using Spotify. You can integrate it with a third party application, and the third party application can, search or view or retrieve songs playlists from Spotify. And let's say that you upload one of your albums, and you want to create it as a new album in Spotify from your third party application. That also can be done using the Spotify API endpoints. So this is how REST APIs are playing a major role in information exchanges between different microservices and systems. I've also taken a video on what are microservices, so you can click on the link that I've provided also, and you can view that video. So if you found this helpful, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.